Good morning. The story of the Good Samaritan is probably one of the most well-known stories in the entire New Testament, and saying something new about it, is probably impossible. But it's also in some ways one of the most complicated stories in the New Testament, because in order to understand the story, you need to understand what a Samaritan is, and in order to understand what a Samaritan is, you have to have a pretty good grasp of about 1,000 years of history, which is not likely. So I thought the simplest way to do that this morning was to actually do 1,000 years of history together.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So we are going to all come and stand here in the middle aisle.
Yes.
We're going to be the people of Israel. Okay? Right now. Okay? So you guys can come to it from the back if you want, or not. Right? I'm easy. Okay? So we're all going to stand here. Okay, so how many of you know which direction north is? Point north. Yeah, John's got it. Right, north is about on the 45 here. So, right, so but we're just going to pretend that north is straight up here. Okay? So we are the people of Israel, and then Israel is a fairly small place. Right, so north to south in populated Israel is like 40, 50 miles. Okay? Israel is about a third the size of West Virginia, and half of it is uninhabitable. Okay, so Israel's a pretty small place, and it's all a skinny, it's all sort of a longitudinal place just like this. So if you imagine, up here is the Sea of Galilee, and down there, sort of near Danielle and Andrew back there, is the Dead Sea. Okay, and this is all Israel. And down here, you've got the Jordan River running down this right about here. Okay? No, wait a minute, it's got to be running between the two. Right, this is the Mediterranean Sea. So this is the Mediterranean Sea over here. Okay. Good. Okay. So we're going to start in. You're in Jordan. You can't be in Jordan. You got to be in Israel. Okay. So we're going to start in the time of David. Okay. In the time of David, all of the people of Israel are together, and they're more or less happy and healthy and doing okay. Right? Go hooray! Right there. You know. Some of you don't look very excited about this. That's okay. Okay. But then, right? So David's son becomes king afterwards, and his name is?
Solomon.
Solomon, good. And Solomon is a horrible king, actually. The Bible really, really tries to make him out to be a good king, but not so much, really. Right? And so after Solomon dies, the kingdom splits into two. Okay, so it splits into north and south, and the south is a much smaller group. So we're just going to split it here. Okay? And we're going to go ahead. So, right, so this is like the two tribes that are faithful to David's clan, and this is the north, and they sort of go their own way with their own kings, and they have a capital in Samaria, which is kind of right in the middle, right, about where Will is standing there, okay? So this is Judah, right, and this is Israel, okay? And this goes on and on and on for like 150 odd years, and then something happens, which is the Assyrians, and they come from over there somewhere. And they come in and they capture almost all of this territory, but mostly the north. Okay? And they take like all the leaders here, right? And they ship them off, so like most of the people. Okay? So you have to go, right? You go up there and well, you got the camera, so you can't go. Right? And you guys, okay? And what happens? Essentially, and then the other thing the Assyrians do is they bring a bunch of foreigners in to mix with you guys, and so your whole identity as Israelites basically disappears. And you're not really sure what to think of yourself, so you start to think of yourself, sort of the people around Samaria, start thinking of yourself as Sumerians. Okay, which is okay, right? But it's not, you don't really think of yourself, you still follow the same God, sort of, and you still have the same Bible, sort of, but it's all pretty sort of. Okay? So this continues on, right? And you guys are sort of, there's a lot of sort of here, right? You guys are sort of independent-ish. Okay? Barely. Right? But then, so this continues on for another 150 years, and then who shows up next? Who knows who shows up next? The Babylonians show up from even further out there, and they conquer like everything. right? And they take the leaders, so you guys, we don't even know what happens to you guys, okay? Because the Bible doesn't care, right? But you guys here, it takes the leaders and it sends them off to Babylon. Okay, so you're one of the leaders, off you go to Babylon. You two, off to Babylon. Right, who's the leader here? Do I want to ask?
Rachel.
Okay, Andrew off to Babylon. Okay? And you guys who are left, you're sort of you're called the people of the land. You're the farmers. Okay, nobody cares about the farmers. You just keep right on farming. Okay? So then right? So the Babylonians send the leaders off to Babylon, but they maintain their identity, right? These guys, this is the sort of the northern 10 tribes. You guys have basically disappeared from history. Okay, they're all gone. All those northern 10 tribes, they're all sort of gone from history. But you guys maintain your identity. You sort of stay in a little clump here. You got to be a little clump, right? And you hang on to this identity. Now, the Babylonians are really, really good at conquering the world, really, really bad at ruling. So then, a few years later, the Persians show up, and they conquer the Babylonians. Okay? And the Persians say, hey, you guys, you can go home if you want to. But you know what? That's not what most of them say.
They want to stay. They don't want to go back.
Exactly. Because Babylon's actually quite a nice place, and there's nice gardens, and it's nice land for farming. They're doing quite well in Jerusalem.
Oh, to go back.
Jerusalem isn't that nice. If you've never been there, it's really not that, yeah, I know, right? But some of them do. Okay? So we're going to leave some of them here, and some of them are going to come back. Okay? Just to give you a sense, right? 500-mile walk. Yeah, I know, exactly, right? So some of you probably aren't going to make it. Right? So, right? Now, these people who came back, right? So you guys got to stick together. They have a problem. Their problem is, first of all, what do they think about the people who never left? The people of the land. Because even before, they were the farmers. And the people in the cities, what do they think about farmers? Well, they're just farmers. They're maybe more valuable than the cattle, but they're sort of iffy. Right?
Linda's taking offense.
No, this is truly how ancient city people thought about farmers. Right? Cows you can eat at least. Right? So this is the first problem. And the second problem is, what do these people down here think about you guys who are living in the north?
And come visit.
Well, not yet. Not yet. But right? And there gets to be, right? And so these people, they're sort of cousins, but they're a little bit intermixed, and there starts to be some conflict. And by the time of Jesus, this conflict has been going on for 450 years. Right? So this is the Hatfields and McCoys, except 450 years of the Hatfields and McCoys. Right? 450 years. Yeah, there's people going back and forth all the time. This is cool, right? Right?
I don't need to.
Right.
I'm going to hold down the fort here by myself.
I want to do things.
Right? I mean, even in Jesus' day, lots more Jews in Babylon than in Jerusalem. Okay? Lots more Jews in Egypt than in Jerusalem. Jerusalem isn't really the center, but it thinks, of course, of itself as the center, because it's always going to think of itself that way. Right? So we have this sort of relationship. You guys become the Samaritans, and you guys are the Jews. Now, the other thing that happens is that some of you guys decide it's getting a bit crowded around here, so you do a sneak around. So you come with me, and we're going to sort of sneak down the side here, and hope they don't notice us. Sorry. Shh, shh, shh. Right? And we're going to sort of establish a Jewish colony up here in the north, somewhere near the Sea of Galilee, which is called the region of Galilee. There you go. Right? So now, in Jesus' day, we've got the Jews up north here in Galilee. We've got the Samaritans in the middle. And we've got the Jews down south in Judea. Which means that every time the Jews up north here want to get to Jerusalem, they've got to go
Through Samaria.
through or somehow try to sneak around Samaria. That they can sort of go up the coast here, or they can go down the valley here. right? But both of these were going to be fairly populated places because they're really the nicest parts of the farming land. All right. So anyway, so why don't you guys all sit down again? So thank you very much for your help, and hopefully this is, all right. Hopefully this is a little bit helpful rather than a lot confusing. I don't know. So what does this mean? Well, for the story of the Good Samaritan, what it means is that it's not a neutral, it's not just somebody who doesn't like each other. It's two groups who've been not liking each other for about 500 years already. They've been practicing this hard. It means that when the Samaritan goes to help this Jewish merchant, he can be pretty sure that if the tables were turned, the merchant wouldn't help him in return. He's not even, probably when he goes up, he's probably not even sure that the merchant is going to accept his help, because this means being touched by a Samaritan who is fundamentally unclean. Right? So these are just not people who dislike each other, a little bit, but these are people who dislike each other really quite a lot. So then it's even more surprising when we keep reading the story and realize how much the Samaritan does, right? Rachel, in her wonderful little story there, had them come up and put bandages on. Now, but that was only, right, step one in our Good Samaritan story. Step one is he bandaged him, right, and then he put him on his animal, which means that the Samaritan has got to walk at that point, and he takes him to an inn, and he takes care of him at the inn, and he pays the innkeeper, and then he says to the innkeeper, when I return, I'm going to come back to check on this guy. So this is a multi-day, multi-process sort of caring. This isn't like throwing 20 bucks in the offering plate and hoping someone else is going to take care of the merchant. This is serious stuff. So that's our first story. Our second story this morning happened 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in my office getting ready for church, and I got a phone call. I got a phone call from some guy who I didn't know, and he was in a bit of a jam. He had been traveling from, well, not Jerusalem to Jericho, but he'd been traveling from up north somewhere to down south somewhere, and his car had stopped, and he had some kids, and he needed some help. And I said, well, I'm new in town here, and I don't really know the resources in town here, but I'll make an announcement in church and see if someone else can help. So I made an announcement in church, and I promptly forgot about him, and I passed by on the other side. Sorry. And I don't want you to come up to me afterwards and say it's okay, because it's not. It's not okay. What I did was not okay. Because I'm the pastor here, and I know this story. I've known this story for like 50 years now. And I've studied this story, and I could probably read you this story in Greek if you really wanted me to. And I still pass by on the other side. So don't come and tell me it's okay. I also don't want you to come afterwards and tell me that you would have probably done the same thing. Because I think I know already that some of you wouldn't have. And if you would have, 2 sinners is not better than 1 sinner. And 3 is not better than 2. So don't come and tell me that. That's not good news. If you want to say anything at all, say, Wes, you are forgiven. That would be good news. And I will try better next time. So what are we going to do with this story? Well, the simplest thing to say is that we're going to try to be better neighbors from now on. And that neighbors is like anybody who needs help. Anybody who needs help. And it's important, though, not to think of this as some sort of rule, because, we're never going to see very often merchants beside the road who are beaten. So this is where I wanted to bring Colossians into this as well. Right? Because Colossians helpfully talks about a few ways of understanding what we're supposed to do with all of this stuff. And Paul talks here about the knowledge of God's will. Right? These are the things in general God wants. God wants us to take care of each other as human beings, as creatures of the earth. We are called to take care of one another. We have the knowledge of what God wants. And we are called, Paul says, to live lives worthy of God. Those of us who call ourselves Christians, who call ourselves followers of God, are asked to live lives worthy of God. And Deuteronomy reminds us that it's not really that hard. It's not that big a deal. I mean, like the guy who phoned me, it wasn't that big a deal. Even if I'd have had to take the rest of the morning to deal with him, you guys could have worshipped without me. You'd have been just fine without me, It isn't that big a thing. It's not a whole bunch of tiny little rules that you got to worry about. Right? You can live lives worthy of God. I believe you can. And I believe that most of you do most of the time. Right? So my job is simply to encourage you the rest of the time. So finally, Paul says, be strong. Be strong because it's going to be a hard week in some ways again. There's going to be more stuff on the news. There's going to be more stuff in your life. There's going to be death and destruction. And you might want to bury your head in the sand and hope it all goes away. But Paul encourages you instead. I encourage you instead. Be strong. Hang in there. Hang in there with one another.